What is up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in again this week. We are gonna look at my GoPro settings, the tips and tricks that I use to get crystal clear GoPro footage in the surf. I'm gonna break down for you guys the resolutions I shoot, the frame rates, the mouth mount I use, the leash system I use, and basically everything you need to know to get epic GoPro footage in the surf. All right, guys, I'm gonna try and make this super quick. So let's go ahead and dive into the mount that I use and how I adjust it to get tube footage. This is the MyGo mouth mount. It has a very similar bite piece to a snorkel. They made it pretty long through here so you get a good bite. It makes it very sturdy. The opening here makes it very breathable. You breathe through this portion. Now, I will say when you're using mouth mounts, no matter what you're using, the breathing is gonna be limited compared to if you don't, because obviously something's in your mouth. The main thing, safety-wise, that you have to be aware of is when you duck dive and you go underwater or you fall, when you come up, you need to blow out first. So as soon as you come up, and then breathe in. If you come up and just start sucking in, you will suck water in. So please be aware of that. The mouth mount attaches here to the GoPro. It'll attach to any GoPro, whether it's the 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. It's pretty standard. You can adjust it based on how you want the angle, and we're gonna get into that a little bit more here in a bit. But continuing on about the mount, it has this hole right here for the leash system, and it comes with a standard leash. But on this one, I use the Pro leash. Basically to solve the issue of having it here wrapped around your neck and banging into your face. Notice I don't have a floaty on this. That's because this leash is so reliable, I don't need one. Not to mention I learned that with the floaty on there, it gets ripped out of your mouth so much more. And so with no floaty, it's more hydrodynamic and it'll go through the water. And then the times where, you do get absolutely pounded and you try and grab it and it gets ripped out of your hands, this thing stretches out. It normally ends up around your feet or, by your waist or something, and it's not smacking you in the face. It's super durable. I've had this same leash for 4 years. It's a worthy investment. You will not lose a GoPro. I've never lost a GoPro surfing thanks to this leash. Let's go ahead and look at how I put it on. Super simple, comes up the arm. Oh, hold on. And then latch it. Honestly, there's not even that much Velcro touching, but they have really good Velcro. I've never had it come undone. Now, the main thing is you don't want it too tight. If you crank this thing down, and then when you start paddling, it cuts off circulation to your arm and you get tired. Don't do that. So make sure it's kind of loose. You can maybe even flex, make a muscle with it. No, I'm not flexing on y'all. And then that'll be about right. And then that way when you're paddling, you're not gonna lose circulation. It's not gonna hurt. It'll be super comfortable. So it looks like this. Here's the main thing. Always put it on your back arm. That way the cord is never in the shot. It's always behind it. The great thing about this leash is it coils. It's made out of some sort of stainless steel cable and then coated with plastic. And so it's super comfortable. I've never had it hurt or anything like that. They use shrink wrap to attach it to this lanyard that goes through. And yeah, this is just an incredible system. Like I said, 4 years. It's very light, very durable. You're never gonna lose a GoPro if you have it on. All right, now like I said, we're gonna dive into the angles you can get. So the biggest mistake in GoPro footage is that people adjust their GoPro like this. You assume you're gonna bite this piece and you want it at a 90-degree angle so that it's looking straight, with your face. The thing is, when you're surfing, your head's tilted down. Whether backside or front side, your head's down. So I've found that the best angle is typically somewhere in here. I like to angle so that you have the GoPro line up with this piece right here. Now, the smaller the barrel, the more you'll want to angle it up a little bit. Now, everyone's preference is going to be a little bit different. Basically, the more you angle it up, the more lip you see and the more wave face and the less board. And then the more you angle it down, the more board you see. Now, sometimes it's cool to get the board in the shot and sometimes you don't want the board in the shot. It just depends on your preference there. But overall, you're gonna want it somewhere along the lines of this. Now, in saying that, to get good footage of you doing turns and cutbacks or airs if you can do them, you actually want it angled like that so that it sees your feet.
then it's a little just like this. It is.
See, it's like that. And so that'll point at your feet and you can get those airs and turns or whatever else you're doing. I've had clips where I had it like this in the barrel, and then as I came out,
I grabbed it and then angled it down.
if you couldn't hear me, I grabbed it and angled it down so that as I came out of the barrel, I could do a turn or do an air and get that shot as well. If you leave it pointed up like it is for the barrel, when you do everything else, you're not going to see it. So that covers the MyGo mouth mount and their Pro Leash system, the angle that you should have your GoPro at, and how to get turn footage versus barrel footage. Now, for a question that I get DM'd probably the most, how do I get my footage so clean? No water drops or anything. And it's actually really simple. Just lick the lens a lot.
People are always asking how I keep the lens on my GoPro so clean. Well, if you want to know, there you go. Then when you're paddling into a wave, dip your chin underwater. Cleans it off.
You know, it's really gross. Basically what happens is you want your lens to be coated in saliva. And then as you're paddling into the wave, you want to dip your chin down into the water. And then when you dip it into the water and it wicks off, it cleans the lens. You don't want to use spray solutions that are going to build a film up on there because it's going to make your footage look soft and not as sharp and pretty. So saliva is the best thing. So this is a very simple and free solution to your problem. Just lick it constantly. It sounds weird and you'll probably look funny in the water, but you're going to get crystal clear footage doing that. Now say you have the GoPro mounted on your board. Still lick it, but obviously you can't dunk it underwater when you're paddling in. So what you would do is just before you start paddling for the wave, splash some water onto the lens so that it wicks it off and then go. Okay, now let's talk about your settings for your GoPro. I'm not gonna sit here and break down every little bit. It's gonna vary from whether you're an editor and you know what you're doing, or you barely know how to set up your GoPro and you just wanna take the footage and put it on your phone. The settings will vary. You're going to get different results quality-wise, but it's all about what your outcome is. If you wanna be able to make videos to watch on YouTube or something like that, you're gonna wanna have your settings more dialed in on the kind of the professional side of things. If you're just gonna be going straight to your phone and you don't, or even the computer, and you don't really know much about editing, and you just want it to come off the GoPro, ready to view and ready to share, then your settings are gonna be different. So I'm gonna put an image up here that's gonna show the more professional settings on the right side, dialed down to the more user-friendly beginner settings on the left side. And basically as the settings go across, you're gonna have more difficult stuff on the right side and easier stuff on the left side, depending on what you want. We'll leave it up here for a few seconds so you can take a screenshot of it and save it for later. The one thing I will talk about is the 1440 resolution or the 960 resolution as opposed to 1080 or 720. Those resolutions are a 4:3 ratio. That is what the GoPro sensor is shaped like. Anything 1080, if you don't shoot super view, cuts off the image and you miss parts of the barrel, whether it's the bottom by your feet or the lip. The way I edit my footage is I take the 1440 resolution, and when you can go to scale, I unclick it so that it's not uniform, and I set the scale width to 100% and the scale height to 75%, and that scrunches the image down and fits it into that 16:9 ratio. Same thing applies for 960p. Both of these resolutions I think give you a clearer, better image than the 1080 Super View, but the 1080 and 720 Super Views are definitely more user-friendly and don't require any adjustments to the scale in post-production. I'll also say that your EV compensation and your ISO maximum will vary depending on cloudy or sunny days. The brighter it is outside, the lower you want them. Your EV comp can go -0.5 on sunny days or 0 on cloudy days. And your ISO maximum I would set to 100 on bright sunny days or all the way up to 400 on cloudy days. And it varies, maybe you would set it to 200 on a day that's like partly sunny, partly cloudy. That way you get the best of both. And as far as frame rates go, you can shoot 2.7K at 60 frames a second, and that's when you get to use the new GoPro's Hypersmooth stabilization, which is absolutely incredible. But you wanna pick your frame rates based off of the waves. If you're gonna be getting much longer barrels, then you can go down to 60 frames a second. But if your barrels are really short and fast, which the majority of us get, then you want to do 100 to 120 frames a second because you want to be able to slow that motion down as much as possible. Now here's another settings tip, and this goes for adjusting anything in the water. You know, GoPros have the touchscreen now. Back when the Hero 4 was out, you could still change settings, you know, based off the buttons on the sides, but they're all touchscreen now. That provides to be an issue in the water. Well, here's your trick. We're gonna turn the GoPro on. Once it's on, you're out in the water and say you wanna change your settings. If you press down the power button and the record button quickly at the same time, hold and release, it brings up the settings menu on the screen right here. You can then shuffle through the settings with the power button and then select things with the record button. That's very crucial to know because I've paddled out times having had my GoPro set up for shooting fishing, which I shoot 4K and 24 frames a second. And I've paddled out and had those settings on. And I used to not know how to change it. Thankfully, Anthony Walsh showed me that little trick and it changed my life because now I can be out in the water and be like, oh no, my settings are wrong, and then adjust them. And you just cycle through with the power button and you get to the bottom of the list of settings and you hit done and it goes back to operating the same way it has been. This is super critical to know in the water. Now, as far as mouth mount footage, the GoPro is gonna end up mounted upside down. So what you wanna do is you wanna go into your settings. I'm gonna do it on here, that way I say it right. You'll swipe down, you'll go to your preferences, you're gonna go to touch display, and then you're gonna go to landscape lock, and you're gonna pick down. Some of you might have an older camera and you can pick auto, that's great. The thing about the new Hero 7 is that you can only pick up, down, or off. And if you have it off, it'll auto orientate, but it can accidentally set it up in portrait mode, which you don't wanna do. So just make sure that you set it to down, then you don't have to do any editing in post. For instance, you see the camera here is upside down, but the display here is right side up. And if I flip it, it doesn't change because I have it locked. So you can see on your display what your orientation is. And yeah, just make sure you have that set up right beforehand. Also, some settings to know, I'll just put them up here. Go into your preferences and you go to general. You wanna have your beep volume high. You wanna have your default mode to video. You wanna have your auto power off set to never. You wanna have all LEDs on. And then under touch display settings, you wanna pick your landscape lock, like I said. You wanna set your screensaver to 1 to 2 minutes. That way it'll turn off when it's not in use and you don't lose battery. And you wanna set your brightness depending on how long you want your battery to last. I have it set to bright, but if you want it to last longer, you can set it lower. Now going back to the mouth mount and whatnot, whether you use a floaty or not is up to you. I just found that without the floaty, I can see the screen, I can know when my settings are right or wrong, because you can look at it and be like, oh, it's blown out, or oh, it's too dark, and then adjust them. Whereas with the floaty on there, you never know, and you might have an entire session where you come in and the footage is worthless. It's all about what you're comfortable with. If you have the leash, you're not gonna lose it, so you can get rid of that floaty and make sure your settings are right and frame up shots. If your buddy's coming by you, you can watch the screen and, you know, make sure that you're doing it right. Well guys, that's the gist of my GoPro settings and how I get the footage I get. From the resolutions and frame rates I use, to the mouth mount and leash system I use, to licking the lens. Always lick your lens, just constantly, like obsessively. I hope this helps you guys out. I hope that I get some DMs and messages on this video that your GoPro footage has been fixed. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'm pretty sure I covered it all though. So get out there, get your settings right, get to filming, and enjoy. It's so cool being able to gather GoPro footage and relive those barrels from years past over and over. That's my favorite thing. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't been, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss all these videos that I'm dropping every week. And for those of you who have been tuning in, thanks for joining, and I'll see you guys next week.